Hello, 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 and welcome back to Weekly Knit Chit Chats. If you're new around here, you don't know who I am. Hello, welcome. I am Jessica, the knitting designer behind Snickerdoodle Knits, and the design coach, mentor behind the Design Circle, and now the founder of In Tandem. So this is something I like to do every week to hang out and just connect, chill, do some knitting. I usually end up doing a lot more knitting, or not a lot more talking than I do knitting. We'll see if I can even tell where I am on my project. But hello Karen, how are you doing? Yeah, so it's been a little while since we've had a weekly knit chit chat, and that is because I have been traveling. So in the weekly knit chit chats, I usually chat about what's been going on with me. I know lots of folks around here enjoy it when I talk about travel stuff, so probably a lot of this will be about that. But I always like to start with 3 words to describe your week. So how would you describe your week in 3 words? I've also dropped a stitch marker here, so that's lovely. I kind of cheated, and for my 3 words this week, I said, I don't know. Is that cheating? It's definitely cheating. But what 3 words would you use to describe your week this week? So I got back from traveling really late Saturday night. So sorry, that probably was annoying noise. So yeah, this week has been catching up. It was very busy with Kickstarter stuff. I'll talk a little bit more about that. Lots of ups and downs on just getting back to normal life. Karen says exhausting, tired, and busy. I can totally relate. I hope that with the weekend coming up, you're able to find some rest. And of course, I don't think weekends should be our only time to be able to rest. So hope you're able to give yourself some grace and get some rest, some sleep, whatever it is that you need. Yeah, so let's pedal back 3 weeks. Just before I left, no rest with grandchildren duties. Oh, I hope you still are able to find somewhere, somehow, a place where you're able to catch your breath a little bit. Maybe that's in the shower or the bath or something like that. Because rest really is so important for us. Yeah, what was I saying? Oh, okay, so just before I left, I sent off my third-party design, which was super exciting. You've seen a couple of really quick sneak peeks of that on past weeks of the weekly knit chit chat. But I finished a second sample. I went ahead and did swapped the contrasting color and the main color. So there's a sample, there are 2 different sizes, samples with the colors in both ways so that they can use them that way too. So I got that sent off, and then I left. So it was basically 2.5 weeks of traveling. It's a trip that we've been planning for quite some time. We went with my brother and his spouse and went to several different European countries. So yeah, but before I get into all of that, welcome to the other folks that are joining. If you want to share 3 words to describe your week, go ahead. I cheated and I said I don't know. Karen had said exhausting, tired, and busy. But today it's 4:00 p.m. And it's Friday afternoon, so it's kind of a fun time to just reflect and think about how the week went, good or bad. Okay, so before I get totally down a rabbit hole of talking about all of the things with my vacation, I did want to talk a little bit more about In Tandem. So if you're not familiar, it is a new publication that I'm working on with 16 other designers. Before, when I talked about it, I probably said 14 other designers, because when we released the Kickstarter, there were 14 other designers, but we had two design positions that weren't filled, and there were some folks that expressed interest after we opened the Kickstarter. So we went ahead and opened that with the same process we'd used before, and went ahead and invited 2 more designers on. So that means that all of the issues now have 6 designs. Previously, 2 of them were supposed to have 5 designs. So that was exciting. And then, of course, the whole time I was gone, the Kickstarter campaign was running. The reason for the Kickstarter campaign was to raise some funds to offset some of the upfront costs of creating the publication. So a lot of that is the photography and modeling costs for getting photos for the patterns. And then there's other things too, like tech editing fees and just miscellaneous expenses. And then, of course, with the Kickstarter, also have to pay for the rewards that we're offering. But yeah, so that's the purpose of what the Kickstarter was for. The Kickstarter ended on this last Monday, and we met our minimum goal. So that was very exciting because that allows us to move forward without having to figure out where we're going to get that funding, because we had, discussion with all of the designers involved. The costs were more than we could afford among the 16 of us. And so then if the Kickstarter didn't get funded, we would have to figure out alternative solutions. But so excited that the Kickstarter worked out. The minimum funding was met, and then we also reached 2 of our stretch goals. So that was for tech editing, and that was for creating accessible versions of the first 4 issues. So that is easy read, low print versions, which allows folks with lower visibility to be able to read the patterns, which is really amazing. Unfortunately, we didn't have the screen reader versions funded. That is what allows folks who are blind to actually work from the patterns, which I think is really cool. It reads it to them through their screen reader. But we're very glad to have the large print, low vision, easy read version. So we will be working with Renee Van Hoy, who is a accessibility consultant. We've already been in touch with her and all of that, so I'm excited to get moving forward on that. I think that's most of the Kickstarter talk. Since then, of course, now that we know our financial situation, we've been working behind the scenes to finalize contracts and stuff, make everything last bit official, so that we can keep moving forward with designing. But Lady Night Designs said, crazy, exhausting, and sad. I can also relate, and I'm sure some of the sad comes in with perhaps there's also some personal stuff going on, of course, but the events happening in the States, so tragic and disappointing. I haven't really been sure how to talk about it, because there's an event in my past that I have PTSD from, and so it's really hard for me to think about it without my heart starts racing and all sorts of different things, fear and things like that come up. So I have been meaning to say something. There is a fundraiser that Marionated Yarns is putting together that I want to share, things like that. But yes, so much going on in our world and for everybody as individuals. So today especially, I've been thinking a lot about just extending love to everybody. This is Pride Month, of course. We need more love. And so, something else I've been thinking about recently is, the saying is, you don't know what people are going through, so be kind. But I also think it shouldn't matter if somebody's going through something or not. Like, let's just be nice to everybody. Spread kindness and love. So yes, I feel you. And I hope you're also able to take some time to take a breath and find some rest and stuff like that as well. So all right, I think pretty much everything is vacation chat. Are you interested in seeing photos and stuff, or do you want me to just talk about it? I wondered if maybe it would be easier to show photos here than like bombarding my Instagram stories. But I know that folks really loved it when I shared from my trip to Utah and Arizona with like the Grand Canyon and stuff like that. So actually right before this live, I went through and saved some of those photos and things, if you want to see them. But yeah, I left on Thursday evening and came back Saturday night, a little over 2 weeks later. So it was a quick trip. We, like I said before, we went with my brother and his spouse. It was myself and my spouse, which was really fun because my brother and I are only 14 months apart, so we were very close in age. And then after, I'm the oldest, and then it's my brother, and then there's a 6-year gap. Yeah, 6-year gap, and then there's another 4-year gap between our other siblings. So for quite a while, it was just us two, and we were very close together, growing up until about middle school age. And so we still got along, but we weren't doing everything outside together and things like that. But anyway, so after I went to college 6.5 hours away from home. Ever since then, I haven't been nearly as close to him. Don't talk nearly as much, and don't see him nearly as much and things like that. So it was a lot of fun to be able to do the trip as us two couples together. And yeah, so we started by going to London. I've been to Europe one other time, but I was not in any of these countries. I studied abroad in college. But none of the others had been to Europe before. So that was exciting. They'd never been across the seas. So I've only been overseas one other time. And I guess another precursor thing here, especially in case you don't follow along with my stories, my Instagram stories. I love travel. I love watching travel stuff. Most of what I watch now on YouTube, I don't watch a whole lot of knitting podcasts anymore, because I always go to the travel vlogs, stuff like that. So, I love watching all that kind of stuff. So that's also part of why, I'm excited to share, because I know that I love seeing that stuff. Anyway, so we started by going to London. We had a direct flight from here in Charlotte, which was super nice. Although it felt like the whole time they were just trying to feed us. So we left here at like 6:00 p.m. and we got there at 9:30 in the morning. So the idea, of course, was that we'd be able to, it was like 7.5 hour flight. And the idea, of course, is that you're able to sleep. But you know how that goes with planes. And then, of course, it was like, we get up in the air, and then a little bit later they're bringing snacks and drinks, and then pretzels for snacks. And then it feels like it's just a little bit later, and they were bringing out dinner, and then a little bit later they were bringing out breakfast, and there might have been another snack in there too. I don't remember. Anyway, it just felt like they were constantly bringing stuff out and making noise and stuff. But So we didn't get a whole lot of sleep. None of us got a whole lot of sleep. My brother and his wife were coming from Montana, and they had multiple connections, so it wasn't overnight. But yeah, so we got to London. Let me see if I can figure out how to share photos. Just before I started the live, I went through and tried to narrow it down a little bit so I don't have 10,000 photos to share. Okay, not quite 10,000. I don't have 10,000 on my camera roll. But, I didn't, have a whole lot of time. I just did it like in the last 5 minutes before the live. So I didn't have a whole lot of time to go through photos. But I tried to grab a few just to show what we did. So this photo, of course, is the typical telephone booth photo that you have to take when you're in London. And then, let's see, this might be a little bit more annoying than I thought, but, yeah. And of course, if you have any questions, if you want to say anything, if you think this is boring, just let me know. This is Big Ben. We didn't have like a super great view of it, but, it's one of those things where we saw it. And then just like all of the different palaces and stuff. Something that I really enjoy, and something you might not know, is that I study architectural engineering for school. So I had architectural history classes and things like that. And so seeing all of the different historical architecture and modern architecture is something that I really love about traveling. So this is the Ferris wheel. It's called the London Eye. It's a big touristy thing in London. There's the river in front of it. But you can get into it's enclosed glass cages, basically, that create the Ferris wheel. And you can get in it and go around, and you're supposed to be able to see really great view of the city. We did not go inside of it, however. And then we were supposed to go to Shakespeare's Globe Theater, and got there and found, we had bought some sort of pass beforehand, but we didn't book the specific, so it was you could go to 2 different spots in London, and we hadn't booked something specific with Shakespeare's Globe Theater, and once we got there, we found out that they had different plays going on, so we couldn't go inside for the time being, but we were able to book tickets for the evening. So this was later when we went back, saw the Globe Theater, and were inside for one of the plays. And yes, I should remember what the play's name is because it is definitely extremely famous. And no, I'm not going to remember it right now. So this is what it looked like inside. And it was just kind of cool to think about what it was like hundreds of years ago, of course. And yeah, just all of the people, all of the down below, that's standing room only. So then, let's see, what else did we see in Europe, or in London? We went up into the Shard, which is a famous building, but it's really tall, and so you have a good view over the city. So this is one view that just shows you the Tower Bridge and river and things like that. And then I think I have another photo here saved of another view. This is more of the skyscrapers and stuff. When I share the photos here, it zooms in partially, so sorry about that, but I guess it's better than nothing. So basically we got in Friday morning, like I'd mentioned. The idea was that we were going to go to Dover, the White Cliffs of Dover, and the castle there. But we had to wait a couple hours for my brother to get in, and then everybody else was so exhausted that they didn't want to go. So we didn't end up going inside of any castles while we were in London area. Bit of a bummer, but we did get a little more sleep that night because we were able to go to bed early. So then Saturday was basically our day in London. And we just walked around this whole loop that we had planned out. So then this picture here is, I don't remember the actual name of it, but it's a square where they have the fountain, obviously, they have statues, and it's just kind of like a meeting place to hang out. And then the Chinatown is very close to that. So we just walked through Chinatown quickly. And then we did see after Chinatown, we went to Buckingham Palace, which is the palace where the Queen lives. Well, I don't think she does anymore, actually. But Trafalgar Square, yes, thank you. I have no idea if I said that correctly, but yes. And Karen, I should just have you narrating this because you know a whole lot more, I'm sure, about all of this than I do. In London, we didn't do any tours, with anybody, so we didn't get the history lesson kind of stuff. It was just all matter of what I had researched beforehand, or, learned in history beforehand, or from books and things like that. We did find that in the other cities, it was really nice to be on the actual tour guides and get the information and connect everything and all of that. So, so we did go to Buckingham Palace. I forgot to choose one of those photos in this album, but we didn't have a super great view of it either because there's a big event going on, or was. Anyway, so then from the UK, we went to the Netherlands via Belgium on a train. All of our transportation was by train. Yes, the Queen lives at Windsor Castle now. That is the other castle I was hoping to see. So I was hoping that we had 2 hours to wait while my brother, before my brother arrived. And I was hoping we could go to Windsor Castle in that 2 hours because it's not that far from the London Heathrow Airport. But we were there too early, so there's that. And they didn't have a place where you could store your luggage and stuff. So we would have had to store it at the airport and then come back to the airport. And long story short, we did not go to Windsor Castle, and we did not go to the White Cliffs of Dover. So basically we just saw the City of London. We did go to a nice little park Friday evening and stuff, but yeah. So this is just a countryside view on the train somewhere between the UK or between London and Amsterdam. It's the Queen's Platinum Jubilee this weekend, 70 years on the throne, the longest serving monarch the UK has ever had. Yes, I was thinking it was happening about now, and I think that's what they were starting to set up while we were there. So there was a bunch of grandstands and stuff being put up, and things blockaded, and we could go up real close, so we did see it, but we didn't have the farther away photos and stuff. So cool. So I don't want to generalize, but I felt like in general a lot of our views outside of the trains were beautiful green grassy fields or agricultural fields. In general, it just seemed very, very green and beautiful. So our next stop was Amsterdam. We got there Sunday night. And our first day in Amsterdam, we did have a walking tour, showing us around, telling us some of the history. I'm somebody who enjoys, and very flat. Yes, it is very flat. I'm somebody who enjoys the stories and the history things. And another thing that I love is canals and waterways and rivers and things like that. So I already was a little bit biased before going. I was most excited about seeing Amsterdam. And I could probably still say that the Netherlands in general was my favorite. Part of that, of course, is what we did there. And so, of course, I have several photos of the canals and such. Let's see here. So yeah, we did the walking tour first thing. And then we went to the Anne Frank Museum, which was interesting. Like, I'd read Anne Frank's diary probably in high school. And I've read quite a bit of historical fiction books around World War II and things like that. And the museum, it covered a lot of the history stuff that I already knew. It doesn't have a whole lot of, things left over from it. But definitely, like, I'm not disappointed that I went. So, where we actually stayed in the Netherlands was this town that I probably don't know how to say correctly, but Zaandam. And if you've ever seen this photo of this building, it's a hotel. Yeah. So this was part of our view between the train station and the Airbnb that we stayed at. So just fun. It has lots of canals as well. Beautiful. So something, if you don't know about Amsterdam, or the Netherlands in general, a lot of the land is actually man-made. So they built up a bunch of land, and it was just a bunch of water, and they built up the land and stuff. And so that's why there's all the canals. So let's see, what else did we do? We did the Anne Frank Museum, and then the rest of the evening we just walked around. Then the next day we did a bike tour that started in the city of Amsterdam, but then it went by ferry over to an island, with more countryside stuff. So that was really neat to see more of the countryside. And this is probably part of why the Netherlands were one of my favorite parts, just because we saw more than just the city. Let's see, I have more photos. We saw sheep along the way, and we saw quite a lot of cows. My spouse is not as excited about travel as I am, and he was laughing at me getting excited about all of these things that basically I grew up with in Montana. But anyway, I don't know, I thought it was a lot of fun, really neat. Again, very green. It was somewhat rainy, so we did get some Dutch weather. And I was very surprised by how much I enjoyed the bike ride. I also tried out an electric bike for the first time, and absolutely loved it. Definitely would do that again. And now I'm kind of tempted to actually look into the prices of buying an e-bike, because you can get so much farther faster and it's easier. So then after the bike tour, we went to, I know how to write it. I don't know if I can't, we did not do our homework before we went, because we definitely took advantage of the fact that all of the countries we were going to have a lot of English-speaking tourists and speak a lot of English, and so learning the languages and things we did not do, which feels so touristy, so American. That was not the case when I studied abroad. So anyway, my version of the town name is Zanschanz. But it's this area where it's a whole windmill village, and so each windmill had its own purpose. It was generating power for a different kind of manufacturing, I guess you could say. So like one was the sawmill, there was one that was the like coloring for clay and stuff, like grinding up the powders to make the colors and things like that. We got there around the time that several of the windmills were starting to close. So we only got into one windmill, and that was the sawmill, so we got to see everything, how it worked. We didn't actually see it in action because we were so close to closing time, but what we did get to do was something that most people don't get to do. So because we were there right as they were, getting ready to close down a bunch of the stuff, some of the guys who run the just equipment and stuff for the sawmill to show how it works throughout the day, they invited us to go up top and watch them take down the sails on the windmills. So that was really cool. We were able to climb up top and saw over what a lot of people don't get to see. So that was kind of fun. There was an advantage to being late. Let me see here. I have a picture of looking over. So that was like our view from up top. So that was really cool, unique, and fun to watch. Just another part that I guess I hadn't really thought about was that they would be taking down the sails during the night when there weren't folks to watch over it. And so here's just another picture of that village area. Cute little houses. And then there's also different workshops. So there's like there was the wooden shoe making workshop area, and they had all sorts of displays of several different hundreds of years types of shoes, and shoes for different occasions, and little tiny baby wooden shoes. And then so we went inside of that one. It wasn't closed yet, and there was the cheese making workshop that wasn't closed either. So those were just like buildings. They weren't generated by windmills, but it was fun to go into those, and all of the cheese was amazing. Yes, so then let's see here. Did I have anything else from there? Nope. So then from Amsterdam we went to Paris, but we really didn't spend a whole lot of time inside of Paris. Our first full day there, we booked a full day tour to go to Versailles. So we left the city, and before you get to the palace and stuff, the tour brought us through these markets, where for us folks from the US, there aren't a whole lot of, big, huge stores for buying groceries and stuff. There's a lot, there's these markets, but then even more typical is the markets just along, just like more shops. Let's see here. So then, of course, we saw the palace, but we actually spent most of our time just wandering the grounds of the palace, basically. And there were a couple of other buildings on the grounds where other folks visited or lived or whatever. So here's just an example. Of course, there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of rooms of stuff. Let's see here. Something that I found really interesting was Marie Antoinette. She had this fake town created for her kids so that they grew up in a more normal setting, and not just inside of the palace, which I found very interesting. But like there was all these different buildings for folks to do different things, and so they grew up, her kids could grow up out there. It's interesting because it's like, you know, the whole idea of her wanting them to have a more normal raising, but also considering that like all of the money that would have been required to do all of this and have like sure paid people to like be there and like be the gardeners and like, you know, to operate this town. Anyway, there's so many different things that are so interesting. And then let's see here. Okay, so after that we went back to Paris and saw the Eiffel Tower finally. And we did a rover tour. It was pretty much all at after dark. So we saw some of the stuff lit up and stuff. That's the only place we were able to see the Notre Dame from. We didn't have time to go visit it, which for me and my architectural self was a little bit disappointing. But we did, here's a picture of Eiffel Tower at night. It's a little bit disappointing that it seems like the quality of sharing isn't super high. But anyway, we did see the Louvre, which is another place that I, learned lots about. This is from another perspective. Typically what we see is this one. But of course it's another thing I learned about in architectural history. And here you can tell it's really dark. There was a big rainstorm that came through just as we were here at the Louvre, so everybody ended up piling underneath the arch close by. So we did, for that, this was our last morning in Paris, we did a e-scooter tour around, which was also a lot of fun. Getting used to them was a little bit interesting. But yeah, so this is and I can't move the photo to show you the whole thing. Arc de Triomphe. I believe. I could be wrong. I don't remember for sure. I just pulled pictures quickly before I hopped on. So then we had our train ride to Nice, which is the southern part of France, close to Monaco and Monte Carlo, and more lush, beautiful green scenery, which I loved. So then in Nice, let's see, we got there Friday night. So my spouse and I, we went up into the mountains, the Alps, via train. We just got off at some different small towns and stuff, just cute little villages, which was fun just to see different way of living, compared to the cities, and the architecture and things like that. Was interesting because the train doesn't go by as often. So we had to, be very careful about our time to make sure we got the right train at the right time. Yeah, here's just another, you can't see a whole lot in this picture because it seems to like zoom them in when I share them on the screen. But let's see here. Yeah, so while we went to the mountains, my brother and his spouse went to Monaco and Monte Carlo, but they did a bike ride, so they biked for like 40 miles. And they didn't use e-bikes like I did. And so what they saw was completely different from what we saw. Monaco and Monte Carlo is lot of money. And the race, let's see, we were there. Oh, okay, the race would have been like last week. So they were getting ready for that. So they saw a bunch of the cars and stuff there and all that kind of stuff. Which was definitely something my brother was interested in seeing. So then this is just like the idea of, this is Nice. You can go up to this, they call it the Chapel Hill? No, I feel like it's, I don't remember. Anyway, where you can look over and there's the sea and the city. So spent a little bit of time on the beach. I should have grabbed a photo. I don't know how common this is, but the beach is gravel, and it looked like they'd brought in all the gravel. So rather than a sandy beach, it was a gravel beach. And I always feel like I have to try new things when it comes to food and stuff there. So I did, it seems like octopus was on so many of the menus. So I did try octopus on a salad. I won't leave that there in case that makes anybody grossed out. But yeah, I wasn't horrific, but not something I plan to eat frequently. Another thing while we were away, we definitely ate quite a lot of gelato. Very good, of course. Very good for you, I'm sure. Let's see. Yeah, so that was basically our time in Nice. We did a little bit of just walking around the city. But by that point, we were starting to get very tired from our go in London and Amsterdam and Paris. And so we took a little bit of time for resting as well. And then our next stop was, we were headed to Florence, but we stopped in Pisa on our way. There were lots of stops on the train, but we got off at Pisa. So here's just more countryside. I don't actually remember if this photo was in France or in Italy, but it's definitely a lot of what we saw in the Italian countryside as well. Lots of more green, flat, like Karen had mentioned, and fields, and just lots of opportunity for growing things, of course. So we had 4 hours in Pisa, I believe. So we, of course, went and saw the Leaning Tower. And had to do the tourist thing and, get the photos of what did I do there? Whoops. Now you see what I'm looking at. I don't know how I swapped. Oh, there we go. Don't mind me. Okay, so of course we had to do the tourist thing and try to get photos of us holding up the tower, the tower. It was just amusing, all of these things that tourists do that are as silly as you think they are. And then we sat on the lawn for quite a while, and here's the river that goes through. And like I said, I love the architecture and I love the rivers and canals, so that's probably a lot of my photos. Okay, so from Pisa, like I said, we went to Florence, and we split off again. So my brother and his spouse went bike riding. They went out into the countryside some and then saw some of what we saw. We went walking through a lot of the touristy areas. And Florence, the tourist areas are very touristy. So basically I had gone through and picked all of the buildings and things that I wanted to see, and created a loop to walk, and probably 2/3 of that was definitely where the tourists are, and it's they're just walking all over the streets and everything. It's just throngs of tourists. So we were definitely in the tourist area in Florence, but of course lots of architecture to see, and I thought it was very interesting to actually see all these different things that I learned about quite a few years ago now in college, and to actually see them in real life and see the scale. And then I love the views over the cities and things like that. Let's see here, what else do we have? Oh, and of course there's more water. I don't know, can I zoom in here? I can't. Oh, yeah, I can't zoom in on the photo, but the bridge that we're looking at in this photo is interesting because it's like built up as a bunch of different shops. So if you're walking through it just on the street, you don't actually realize that you're walking over the water until you get to, there's a couple of arches where you can look over the water. I just thought that was very interesting. Hello and welcome to different folks joining. This has kind of become me just talking about my trip and showing photos. But please do share how your week's been. Feel free to share 3 words to describe your week. Yeah, so then we are basically our one evening that we went out to the countryside again and visited some friends of friends. So that was a lot of fun. They had goats and cow, at least one cow, some hens, and big garden, things like that. So it was fun to see more of the countryside there around Florence. And then our last stop was Rome. So we got there Wednesday afternoon. I'm trying to remember. We didn't really do a whole lot Wednesday afternoon. It seemed like I had planned things, our travel days, so that we would have, time once we got there to go see some things and stuff, and we kind of ended up just resting once we got places because we were tired. So on our touristy day of Rome, we went to the Vatican City, but only through the museum, with a walking tour, and that was the one walking tour I would say wasn't quite as interesting for me. A lot of the museum is a lot of sculptures and art and that kind of thing. We didn't have a whole lot of history stuff in there. A lot of it about like Michelangelo, some about Raphael, but so that was several hours of that. We were expecting a little bit more history stuff around the Vatican City, and we didn't really get to see anything else outside of, actually part of the Vatican City. So one thing that I did find really fascinating were all of their old maps, which are hanging up as artwork, and they are actually drawn to scale and all of that kind of thing. I just chose a random one there to share, but just all of the different areas of Italy that they have on maps there. And then in the afternoon, we did a tour that included the Colosseum, and the Roman Forum, and Palestine Hill, I think is what it was. So we learned quite a lot about the Colosseum. I found that very fascinating. Again, architectural geek part of me. And that was, like I said, that was a tour. So got a lot more stories and things like that. Here's a look inside of the Colosseum. Something interesting, if you didn't know, because I didn't know this, I don't think, maybe I did, and I didn't remember, but there would have been the platform where the events actually happened, but under that, there's all of this stuff that we see here in the center of the picture. Excuse me. That were like different elevator shafts and walkways and things for people to move around underneath, so that there were like, could be surprise events coming out of the floor and things like that. So a lot of that stuff is still remaining as far as the structural walls and things like that. Let's see here. I think this picture shows, yeah, that picture shows just like some of the exterior parts of the Colosseum that have just worn away with time, earthquakes and things like that. Which I don't know, I just find it interesting. You can see just how it's like broken away and stuff. And so it used to be a bit larger. Let's see here. And then, so this is just like some ruins and stuff of where the emperor was, and several different emperors lived. And then there were also commoners and stuff that lived up on the hill and stuff. So just lots of ruins from a long time ago. Something that I was very excited to see was the Roman Forum, because that was something that we studied a bit in architectural history, and really it's just a lot of ruins at this point. You can see where a lot of columns were and things like that, some foundation kind of stuff, but there's not a whole lot to actually see from the original structures. And of course, over time they built over things and different stuff like that. So, all right, I only have 3 more photos left. This is the Pantheon, another architectural history place that I wanted to see. And then, that night we went to an opera. I don't have a photo of that, but I mean, I'm not somebody who goes to operas in general, so I guess I don't know what they're like typically, but I knew ahead of time that there was instrumental stuff. My family all my siblings and I were more into strings and stuff, so they did have a quartet there, and it was interesting. The opera part it was just 2 opera singers. They didn't sing every song, so it was the quartet, and then it was the quartet and 1 or 2 of the singers, and it alternated back and forth that way. So I found it interesting that it wasn't just singing the whole time, which is, I guess, what I expected with opera. And then our last day we went to this park, which is a park that has a lot of the old, or I don't know percentage-wise how many, but it has several old aqueduct remains, which is kind of neat to see. So that was our trip. We flew home the next day. We left the air. We flew out from the airport at 10 o'clock. We got up at 6 o'clock, Roman time, or Italian time, and we got home at 11:30 p.m. Eastern time, so I think it was close to 24 hours. Yeah, so, and then the next day my husband started feeling sick, and so that was the end of our trip after we got home. Yeah, do you have any other questions about it? I don't know. I mean, I hope that was kind of interesting. I suppose the folks who are actually interested stick around. I don't know what else to share. I loved it. I definitely would go back to any of those areas again. Of course, we basically had a day and a half to 2 days in each area. I didn't get to see everything by any means. And that's a good question, Karen. And I would definitely go back and see more of the cities and definitely see more of the countryside areas, villages, and stuff around. Yeah. So Karen asked, did I check out any yarn shops? And I did not. It's one of those things where, like, it feels like I should have, because I am a knitter and a designer. But it's also one of those things where this trip was about history and family and things like that. So the yarn wasn't actually my priority. And I knew that I didn't have luggage space for it. We brought our backpacks, and that's what you use to get around. I didn't have a budget for it. I didn't really have extra money to be spending on yarn. And I really don't need more yarn. So it would have been one of those things where I would have gone basically for the sake of taking photos to say I was there. And that didn't feel very much in alignment. So I didn't feel like it was important for me to make that a priority. Yeah. So I did not go to any yarn shops. Yes, I think it would have been cool. I especially like Amsterdam. Mika, who I talked to on Tuesday, she's there. That's somebody that I would have like especially wanted to meet up with, just because it's more of like a personal connection kind of thing. And like Steve and Penelope's there, so that would have been cool. But yeah, it's one of those things where I've decided it's okay if I don't do the things that I feel like knitters are supposed to do. I'm still a knitter, I'm still a designer. Yeah, so Karen said her daughter's going to Paris in September and she has a list of shops and shopping for me. That's great. You know, it's just a matter of, I think, priorities and what's important to you. And it's one of those things where it wasn't nearly as important to me as seeing things and spending time with my spouse and my brother and stuff like that. So, you know, if we would have had more time in each place, I probably would have actually stopped by some yarn shops and stuff, especially just to be able to be there and to see things. But I didn't make it a priority, so it didn't happen. Looking after her son for the week, so it's a trade-off. Perfect, yes. That's great. Yeah, so maybe someday I'll go to some of those yarn shops, but not on this trip. Yeah, oh, something that I forgot to mention in what's been happening this week. I did talk to Mika on Tuesday. If you missed that was the featured designer for May. Mika is the designer behind Salt and Stone Nets. So definitely check that out. That replay is both on my Instagram and on my YouTube. I talked to Amy of Empowered Profit yesterday inside of the design circle, talking about accounting and taxes and legal stuff. Topics that usually aren't that exciting to talk about, but it was a lot of fun. I love all of the guest stuff with the design circle and with Instagram. It just lights me up. So I was supposed to talk to Lonnie Dawson for the design circle on Monday night, but something came up, so they weren't able to make it. So that'll be happening in the future. Lonnie talks a lot about marketing without social media, which is something that designers inside of the design circle have been very eager to hear more about. So I'm excited to have them when they are available. Yeah, okay, so I think that was everything this week. Thanks everybody who joined live, stuck around, and I hope the travel stuff was interesting. Definitely not knitting content. Oh, the other question, I didn't get it, but I expected was, did I do any knitting? and my husband always predicts this correctly. I did not do any knitting. I brought my cardigan. And I didn't even pull the bag out of my other bag. And you know, it's another one of those things where I'm learning to be okay with that. It just wasn't what I was needing in that moment. And that's okay. So I still have my knitting here. I can still knit now that I'm home. Yeah. So the thought that I wanted to leave you with this week is that it is okay to slow down. I've been seeing lots of people talking about it. It's something that's been resonating with me. But a lot of us have just been feeling like we should slow down. There's always a lot going on in life, in work, in business, and whatever you do, if you have kids. And you know, sometimes we need a slower pace, and that's okay. Give yourself that permission if you need it. That's something that I'm definitely thinking a lot about for the month of June. Started thinking more about planning stuff for the month. And it feels weird to me because I don't have big projects that I'm working on. I always feel like I should be working on some new big thing. But instead I'm just focusing on the everyday things and keeping stuff up to date, and not overwhelming myself. So, yeah, I'm excited to see what happens, and of course excited to be having the weekly Knit Chit Chats again every week. Who knows what the month will hold. And of course, as always, I want to leave you with reminding you that you are on your own journey. So you're the one who is in charge of whether you enjoy it or not. So take control of your journey and do what you can to make it as wonderful as you can. And I will send you off with big hugs, lots of love, and I hope you have a wonderful weekend. And I'll talk to you again soon.